You see, sometimes life will convince you that certain things are done. The silence between you and that person feels heavier than words could ever be. Days pass, weeks pass, months pass, and you begin to accept the story as finished. The phone doesn't ring, their name doesn't appear in your inbox, and you start telling yourself, that was then, this is now. But there's a quiet truth moving beneath the surface. Just because something looks over in the eyes of the world does not mean it's over in the eyes of God. When God speaks over your life, when he plants a promise deep inside your spirit, it's not a casual suggestion. It's not something he says to pass the time. A promise from God is an eternal seed, and unlike our human plans, it does not come with an expiration date. Time may pass, feelings may fade, and circumstances may twist themselves into impossible knots, but the seed of his word remains alive. You might not see it breaking through the soil yet, but under the surface, roots are spreading, life is forming, and the moment will come when it will push upward into the light. We often measure possibilities by the clock on the wall or the calendar in our hands. If too much time has passed, we call it dead. If they've moved on, we say it's finished. If we've changed, we believe it's impossible to go back. But God is not limited by the time you measure. He moves in his own seasons. What you see as delay, he calls preparation. What you see as silence, he calls setting the stage. He knows exactly when to breathe life into something you thought was long gone. Some of you have been trying to bury the H. You've tried to convince yourself that you're fine, that you've let it go. You even say the right things. I'm moving on. I've accepted it. But every now and then a song plays or a scent drifts past you in the air, and suddenly there they are again in your mind, in your heart, not as a wound this time, but as a memory that still feels alive. That's not an accident. There are echoes of something unfinished, something that heaven has not yet signed off as complete. And here's the beauty. God doesn't operate on your deadline. He's not checking his watch saying, it's been too long, I guess it's too late. He's the one who can restore years the locust has eaten. He's the one who can call something forth as though it never left. He's the one who can hold the whole art of a relationship in his hands, reshaping the parts that broke, polishing the pieces you thought were lost. You may have told yourself you're too different now, or that they are. But difference isn't the enemy. Difference is evidence of growth. The version of you who lost them might not have been ready to keep them. The version of them who let off might have been ready to love you the way you deserved. God knows how to take both of those versions, refine them in the fire of time, and bring you together when the gold is ready. So don't mistake distance for death. Don't mistake silence for the absence of a plan. A promise kept in God's hands is a promise kept outside the reach of your doubts. And when he brings it to pass, it won't be because you fought for it, begged for it, or forced it. It will be because his word could not return to him void. What he has spoken will stand. Even now, in ways you cannot see, the current is turning, the tide is shifting, and the one you thought was gone, they may just be on their way back to you. Because when the author of your story says the chapter isn't over, you'd be wise to keep the page open. It's a strange thing how we take separation as proof that something has failed, when so often it's the very thing that allows it to grow. When someone we love is no longer beside us, the human instinct is to see that as rejection, abandonment, or loss. But life has a way of pulling things apart, not to destroy them, but to give them space to become what they were meant to be. And it's only with time that we can look back and see that what felt like being torn from each other was in fact a form of divine craftsmanship. You see, there's a version of love that can exist before we are truly ready, a love driven by impulse, by longing, by need, and then there's a deeper love, the kind that emerges only after both people have been tempered by time, shaped by lessons, and taught how to truly hold one another. That second kind doesn't happen in the rush of early passion. It happens in the quiet distance when you've had to learn who you are without the other person to fill the spaces inside you. Sometimes the distance is where the work gets done. It's where old wounds begin to heal without being touched every day. It's where unhealthy patterns begin to unravel. It's where pride softens into humility and where longing turns into clarity. Being apart can feel like punishment, but in truth, it's a refining fire, burning away what can't survive in the relationship God intends for you. When you were together before, perhaps there were unspoken expectations, small resentments, insecurities hiding under the skin. You may have been loving from a place of fear, fear of losing them, fear of not being enough, fear of being too much. That fear has a way of quietly sabotaging love. In the space apart, that fear can be named, faced, and ultimately released. And when it is, love can breathe again. It's worth remembering that preparation isn't just about them. It's about you too. Maybe you needed to learn how to stand on your own feet without leaning too heavily on theirs. And maybe they needed to find their voice without being swallowed by your presence. These aren't signs of incompatibility. They are signs that the foundation wasn't ready to bear the weight of what the future was going to require. We often want God to skip the preparation. We pray, bring them back now, because we miss them, because the nights are long, because the thought of waiting is unbearable. But he knows what's at stake. He knows that bringing them back too soon would mean returning to the same cracks, the same patterns, the same outcome. And he is too loving to give you a quick reunion if it would only end in another goodbye. So the separation becomes sacred. The months or years apart are not wasted. They are woven into the story as essential chapters. During that time, both of you are learning lessons you could not have learned while together. You are being positioned for something greater than simply rekindling the past. This is not about going back. It's about moving forward into a version of love that neither of you could have reached without first walking alone. And one day the preparation ends. One day the timing shifts. One day what was once apart begins to draw near again. And when it happens, you realize you're not holding the same person you once knew. They are stronger, softer, wiser. And you realize you're not the same either. The relationship you're stepping into now is not a remake of what was. It's an entirely new creation built on the lessons of the distance. So don't despise the space between you and them. It may be the very soil in which the love you're praying for is taking root. Because sometimes before God can bring two people back together, he must first teach them how to truly meet. We like to think we understand how things should work. We measure possibilities with logic. We build timelines in our minds, and we convince ourselves that certain outcomes are just common sense. If someone leaves, we assume they're not coming back. If too much time has passed, we declare it impossible. Our reasoning becomes a prison, and in that prison, we only allow what fits our understanding. But life, especially when guided by the hand of God, has a way of slipping through the cracks in our logic. Think about it. If restoration were always meant to make sense to you, it wouldn't require faith. Faith is not about agreeing with what you already understand. It's about trusting in something greater than your understanding. And when God moves, he does so on a scale that shatters human predictability. He doesn't check the odds, consult the statistics, or take a vote. He speaks, and reality rearranges itself to make room for his will. We forget that he's the one who parts seas that cannot be crossed, the one who brings water from solid rock, the one who calls life out of what everyone else has already buried. To him, distance is nothing, time is nothing. Even a heart that seems hardened beyond repair can be softened in a single moment when he chooses to act. It happens so swiftly and so unexpectedly that you can only stand there in awe, wondering how you didn't see it coming. That's why it's dangerous to close the book just because the plot doesn't make sense right now. You might be staring at a mess of scattered puzzle pieces, thinking they'll never fit again, when in truth the picture is already complete in his mind. All he's doing is placing each piece in its perfect place, in the perfect order, at the perfect time. Sometimes the people around you will try to help you be realistic. They'll remind you of all the reasons this person can't come back. They'll point out their new life, their distance, their decisions. But those are just the visible facts. They don't see the undercurrent, the invisible ways God can turn a heart, reroute a path, or dissolve an obstacle overnight. What looks like coincidence to the world is often the fingerprints of heaven, and it's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes the move of God in someone's heart is so quiet, so gentle, that from the outside, nothing looks different until one day everything is. A text appears, a door opens, a conversation begins, and in that moment, you realize the impossible had unfolded right under your nose. We have to remember that logic is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. It's good for paying bills, planning schedules, fixing cars. But when it comes to the deepest matters of the heart, when it comes to love, forgiveness, and reconciliation, logic can only take you so far. Beyond that point, you have to step into the unknown and trust that the author of your story knows exactly where the plot is heading. It's a bit like watching a master painter. Up close, the brushstroke seem random, messy, almost chaotic. You can't tell what the picture will be, but the artist sees it in full from the very first stroke. And when the painting is finished, you realize every single line had a purpose. So if your mind keeps telling you that it's over, that there's no way back, that the story can't be rewritten, just smile at your own reasoning, because there's a truth at work that's greater than your logic, and it's moving even now. And when it unfolds, you won't be able to explain it. You won't be able to take credit for it. You'll simply know that what was once impossible was never impossible at all. There is something important we often overlook when we pray for someone to come back. We imagine the reunion, the relief, the joy of seeing their face again, but we rarely think about what has to happen in us before that moment can truly last. Because if they return and you are still carrying the same hurts, the same fears, the same patterns that broke things before, the story will only replay itself. And if they come back without doing their own work, the ending will be just as painful the second time around. Healing is not a passive thing. It doesn't happen simply because time passes. You can carry the same wounds for years if you refuse to face them. And God is too loving to give you a restored relationship without first making sure both of you are ready to hold it. That means he will often hold back the reunion until the restoration within each of you is complete. Think of it like repairing a foundation. If a house has cracked and shifted, you don't just patch the walls and repaint. You have to go deep, right down to the base, and rebuild what everything else rests on. In the same way, if your relationship crumbled under the weight of insecurity, mistrust, pride, or fear, but those things have to be addressed before the two of you try again. Because love built on a shaky base will always collapse, no matter how passionately it begins. For you, that might mean confronting the ways you reacted instead of listening, or the times you held back your heart because you were afraid to be vulnerable. It might mean learning to forgive not just them, but yourself for the mistakes you made. For them, it might mean dealing with their own past wounds, learning to communicate without retreating, or finding the courage to be fully present. This healing process isn't easy. It can feel lonely. It can feel unfair, especially when you want so badly just to skip to the part where things are good again. But every time you take an honest look yourself and choose growth over blame, you are preparing the ground for a love that can withstand anything. Sometimes in that healing space, you'll feel as though nothing is happening. You might think, well, why am I doing all this inner work if they're not even here? But what you're building in yourself now will serve you for the rest of your life, not just with them, but in every connection you have. A stronger, wiser, more grounded you is never wasted. And the same is true for them. They may not tell you, but they are having their own moments of awakening, their own nights when the weight of what they lost hits them. They may be making changes in private, slowly becoming someone capable of loving you in the way you always deserved. You can't force their healing any more than they can force yours, but you can trust that the same God who is working in you is also working in them. When the healing is done, truly done, the reunion will be different. It won't be rushed. It won't be desperate. It will be calm, steady, and filled with a quiet confidence that this time you both know what you're holding. The sharp edges will be smooth, the old wounds closed, and the love between you will have a depth it never had before. Because when two people meet again, whole within themselves, they no longer need the other to complete them. They choose each other, not from emptiness, but from fullness. And that is the kind of love that lasts. So if you feel like you're in the waiting room right now, don't waste the time staring at the door. Use it. Heal. Grow. Let God make you ready. Because when he does bring you back together, It won't be a second chance at the same story. It will be the first chance at a brand new one. One of the hardest lessons in life is realizing that just because you're ready for something doesn't mean it's time. When your heart aches for someone, when every part of you longs to see them walk back into your life, it's natural to want it now. You imagine the moment, the words you'd say, the way it would feel to finally have what you've been praying for. But love that is rushed often arrives fragile, and what God is building in you and in them requires more than just desire. It requires timing. We live in a world that worships instant results. If we want information, it's a click away. If we want food, it's delivered within the hour. That pace seeps into the way we view relationships too. We think that if we're willing, if we're prepared in our own mind, then everything should happen immediately. But the truth is, relationships aren't microwaved. They're cultivated. They grow in seasons, not seconds. Sometimes you feel the pull toward them so strongly that it's almost unbearable. You convince yourself, if we could just talk, if we could just be in the same room, we could fix this. But there's a quiet wisdom in restraint, because while you might be ready in your own heart, they may still be in the middle of their process. And forcing someone to meet you before they finish their journey only risks repeating the same mistakes that pulled you apart in the first place. It's a bit like trying to harvest fruit before it's ripe. You can pick it early, you can force it off the branch, but it won't taste the way it's meant to. It hasn't had enough time to sweeten to reach its fullness. The same is true of hearts. If you pull someone back into your life before they've ripened into the person they're meant to be, you're asking for a love that will struggle to nourish you, and God knows that. That's why his timing so often feels slow to us. It's not slow, it's exact. He's aligning circumstances, healing wounds, opening doors, and softening hearts in a way that no amount of human pushing could ever achieve. What looks like waiting is actually preparation for something better than you've pictured. It's also worth remembering that timing protects you. Sometimes, in the middle of your longing, you can't see the things that still need to be addressed. Maybe there's something in you that still needs to be let go of. Maybe there's a truth you still need to face. Maybe there's a piece of your purpose you still need to step into before they come back. If they arrived now, before those things were settled, the foundation would still be vulnerable. That's why patience in this kind of waiting isn't passive. It's active trust. It's saying, I believe this will happen, but I refuse to take it into my own hands. It's not sitting still and doing nothing. It's preparing yourself for the moment when God opens the door so that when it happens, you're ready to walk through it without hesitation or fear. And here's the truth. When that moment comes, you won't have to force it. The conversation will happen naturally. The connection will reappear without you straining for it. The door will swing open as if it had never been shut. And you'll know it's right because the peace in your spirit will match the reality in front of you. Until then, the work is simple but not easy. Stay ready, stay faithful, and keep your heart from becoming impatient to the point of compromise. Because if you try to make it happen in your own strength, you might get what you wanted too soon and lose what you were meant to have forever. When the right time comes, nothing and no one can stop it. But until then, remember this: love isn't just about the right person, it's about the right moment. When we think about someone coming back into our lives, it's tempting to picture it exactly as it once was. The same laughter, the same moments, the same kind of love we remember. But when God restores something, He never simply rewinds the clock. He doesn't hand you a duplicate of the past. He builds something entirely new, something stronger, richer, and far more resilient than what was before. It's easy to romanticize how things used to be. In our memory, we smooth out the rough edges, overlook the cracks, and hold on to the highlights. But the truth is, the version of your relationship that ended had limits. It had blind spots. It had weaknesses you couldn't see until everything fell apart. If all God did was give you that same version back, the same problems would return too. So instead, He works in ways that ensure the new thing is not just a repetition, it's a transformation. By the time you come back together, the very dynamics between you will have changed. That doesn't mean the spark, the connection, or the tenderness is gone. If anything, it means those things have been deepened. They've been tested in the fire of distance, in the refining of separate journeys. What comes back is not fragile. It's weathered and proven. Think of it like a tree that's been through a storm. Before, it might have been tall and beautiful, but its roots were shallow. Then the storm came, the winds shook it, and it lost some branches. But in the years that followed, its roots dug deeper into the soil, anchoring it in ways the calm never could. When the next storm comes, it will stand far stronger than before. That's what restoration looks like when God is the gardener. This kind of restoration doesn't just happen for your comfort, it happens for your calling. The love you'll share after coming back together will carry a sense of purpose. It won't just be about the two of you anymore. It will have the power to bless others, to inspire those who have lost hope, to be a living example that things can be broken and yet be made whole again. You might even find that the very pain you went through becomes part of the bond. You'll know the value of what you hold because you remember the price of losing it. You'll speak to each other with a kindness sharpened by the memory of silence. You'll listen more closely, not out of fear, but out of gratitude. And gratitude has a way of keeping love alive in a way passion alone never can. And it's not just about the other person being better. It's about you being better too. The growth you've experienced, the healing you've embraced, the lessons you've absorbed, they will all become part of the relationship's new DNA. It will no longer be a story of two people trying to make it work. It will be a story of two whole individuals choosing each other again with full awareness of what it means. When God restores, He doesn't just put back the pieces. He crafts them into something you didn't even know was possible. And when it happens, you'll look back and realize that the weight, the pain, the doubt, and the wondering were all worth it, because this time you won't just be holding onto a relationship, you'll be holding onto a miracle. And miracles aren't fragile, they're forever.